Hello folks, this is Wes from the Fraser Valley Mountain Bike Association, and I'm going to be talking to you today about using QGIS for trail planning. Now, any of you who have been involved in establishing trails before will know the process. Often you go out and hike the route that you plan to put the trail on, and then later you may have to submit some kind of map to the land manager to get your trail approved. But the whole process of figuring out where you'd want to put the trail in the first place is the discussion that we're going to go through today. Now, many of you are familiar with Trailforks, and Trailforks is probably the most popular mountain biking mapping app that's out there. The problem with Trailforks is that you don't really get to know what's on the ground by looking at the map. And if you're trying to plan a trail in advance, often a map view would be helpful because you kind of know where the trail might best start and the best place for it to end. Now, Trailforks recently added a slope angle layer, so you could get a sense of where roughly what the slope is like in the area. Trailforks tends to underreport the slope quite seriously, and we'll see that as we get into this. The process that I'm proposing here is where you start in GIS first and you really tighten up the location of where the trail could go and where it could not go. And in that way, you can save yourself a bunch of time by simply knowing whole areas where it just doesn't make any sense to put in a map. The ground is too steep, or, whatever the obstacles might be. Now, we're going to be using LiDAR data that the province of BC has made available for many areas of the province. Up on my screen here, I have some of this LiDAR data shown. This is Vedder Mountain here in Chilliwack, and what we're looking at is a geotiff. This is the data that comes out of a LiDAR scan. Now, LiDAR is laser direction or light direction and ranging. So when aircraft is flown over the forest, it's shot millions of data points down into the forest. Some of the laser points bounce off the ground. Some of them bounce off the tree layer. So those ground level bounces create this geotiff, which is a grayscale image that contains position data within the image. And there's all kinds of great analyses that we can do with this geotiff. We can do hill shading. Hill shading creates a faux or a fake, like a light simulation on the mountain. And with this, you can see in great detail where your creek beds are, Forest Service roads, even hand-built trails that are already there, that were already there when the aircraft flew over. We can put in things like, we can create what's called a slope analysis, where we can look at the slope of the mountain. And so the color coding here, green areas, lower slope, yellow areas, higher slope, and then obviously you can see where the higher slope areas are, which obviously there's no practical way to build a trail on there in the first place. So we're going to be talking about GIS here. Now, with GIS, one of the things you need to understand that it's taking a spherical globe and flattening it out to fit on a rectangular map. So most of the time, GIS is going to use what's called UTM. That's Universal Transverse Mercator. And the planet is divided into 60 UTM zones. Now, I'm located in UTM Zone 10. And there's other ways to get map projections to happen. So sometimes data will not be available in a UTM projection. But QGIS will be able to restretch the data to fit a UTM projection. So most data will be in UTM, so that's the format that we will be working with. Now, QGIS is free, so if you just put in download QGIS into your search engine, this is what you will get, and you can just download it for Mac or Windows. So let's get into creating a new project here so you folks can see how this process works. Now, even if you're not in the province of BC, LiDAR data is often readily available for the area where you live, if you're outside of the province. But for those of you who do live within British Columbia, this is a great resource that you can use for trail planning. So here's QGIS. One of the things that you should do before you get started is go to the View menu and go to the Panels section and make sure that layers are turned on so that you'll have this dialog right here, which will be floating around on your screen. Okay, so we'll go to project and we will create a new project. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder for this project, and I'm going to put all of my data for the project inside it. So both the QGIS project data and the data that QGIS is going to create, plus the data that I've downloaded for my project. So what I'm going to do here is go on to desktop, and I'm going to create a new folder. And then inside this folder here, I'm going to create my QGIS project. So here it is. We got our blank slate and we're ready to go. Now, there's a few things that we're going to use. First of all, we're going to get the geotiffs, these digital models of the terrain. We're going to get those from the province. Plus, we're going to get location of various parcels. So private property, public property. We want to know where those are as we are planning our trails so that we can stay off of private property with our trail planning. So first of all, if you get onto your search engine and you search for LiDAR BC, it will bring you to this portal here. So open up the LiDAR data portal, which will bring you to this window. Go to the Discovery and Download tab, and then what you've got to do is zoom in on the area where you're interested in creating a map. So here you can see all the areas of the province where LiDAR data has been created. And so we're going to zoom in on the area here of Vetter Mountain. Now there's various kinds of data that is available that's LiDAR based. First of all, you've got DSM data. That's a surface model, digital surface model, and that includes your vegetation, so you don't want that. Then you have your raw point cloud, and you don't want that either. So what you're interested in is the digital elevation model, the DEM. And this is available at two different scales. So here you can see you've got your 1 to 2500, but those data sets are too small to really be useful for a riding area. So just use the 20,000 grid data. Now, on your area of interest, you need to click on the yellow rectangles and find out what data sets are available. So here in Vetter Mountain, I've got a data set from 2016 and one from 2017. Now I also need to get the data set here from the eastern side, here on this side of Cultus Lake, and there's both 2016 and 2017 data. So you might have to download both of them to know which one that you need. So I'm going to download the 2017 data sets for these two areas. So 2017, there's the TIFF file right there. I'm just going to right click and download it. So I'm going to stick this into that same folder so that all my project data will be in here. Now, when you're setting up one of your projects, you're only going to be doing it for this specific riding area. You're not going to try and get all the different riding areas in your whole city in there. Chilliwack has 3 riding areas. We've got Vetter, Tamahai, and the community forest. And I would create separate GIS projects for all 3 of those. Now in Mission, they've got Red and Bear. They're really close to each other. They're just separated by the highway in between. That could be a single QGIS project. Okay, so I'm saving this file, and they're pretty big files, so it could take a few seconds to download, depending on your internet speed here. So I right-click and save link as. Okay, so that's obviously going to take another 30 seconds here, so we'll just pause while we are waiting for that to download. Okay, so let's go into QGIS here, and we're going to add in those geotiffs. So go to the layer menu here, and we're going to add a layer, and a TIFF, of course, is a raster layer. So you'll hit the ellipsis button right here, and open up the folder where you've got your data stored. So we'll do the G cell first. So there's the data. Hit add, and you'll see it appear in the panel on the right. And we will repeat this process, add layer, add raster, and we will then get the H geotiff in and hit add. You'll see it appear, and then hit close. Now, don't worry about the fact that the grayscaling is different for them. It's just kind of the legend view for these 2 data sets. You can see one of them goes from 18 to 422 meters in terms of the grayscaling, and the other one goes from minus 1,000 meters for some reason up to 1,100. If you make them both 0 to 1,100, they'll both have the same amount of grayscaling. It doesn't affect the analysis process. It's not going to affect anything else that we do later. But if you want, go in there and put the min and max at 0 and 1,100 by just double clicking on these grayscale bands, so that they at least have a consistent appearance on the screen. So you'll just have to see the max and min and find a value that works for both. Typically 0 will be the value that you use because you're not going below sea level. So once you're done, hit OK for both, and now you can see the grayscaling is the same for each of these. Now, these geotiffs, they're not really useful for visualization. They're just there for data analysis. So most of the time, we're going to end up turning these off. Now, in the Layers panel, there's a button here, second from the left, where you can add a group, and we will call this DEM. And then we'll grab the layers here, click and drag them, and put them into this DEM group. So that way we can turn them both off at once. Now, if you just got one geotiff that's going to be in your project, then you don't really need to create a group for it. Okay, the next order of business here is to create our contours. So if we go to the raster menu and grab extraction and then contour, we'll start with the G rectangle here first. 10-meter intervals for the layers is fine. We'll produce a 3D vector if you're interested in 3D visualization later, so we'll produce that. And then once the contours are generated, we want these saved. So here it says save to temporary file. We don't want to do that. We want to save it to a permanent file so that the contours will be a part of this project. So this will be contours 92G, and I've got to again make sure that this is in my project folder here. So all this stuff is going to go into the same folder. So I've created this folder called Vector on my desktop, and I'm saving all of this stuff in here. So now when I hit run, it's going to create those contours for this part of my project. Remember, I've got these two geotiffs that I've got to work with. Okay, so the first bit of contours have been created here. Now you can see it put them in my DEM group, which I'd turned off. So now what I want to do is get these contours so that they're not inside my group, but they're outside. Now you can see as I drag the layer that it's moving the layer into a different stack order, and I want my contours to be on top of my geotiff. So there it is there, and so there's the contours that have been created, and obviously we're going to change the colors of these contours to black. So let's do that. So once the contours are here, double click on them, on the contours layer, and go to the symbology section on the left. And here you can see the color, double click it, and you can choose black, and we'll make the line weight here 0.18 millimeters for our contours. So if I hit apply here, you can see the contours have turned black in the background. Now what we want to do is to create index contours, and I'm going to do it at 50-meter intervals. So I'm going to switch modes here from single symbol to rule based. Now what I need to do is to add a rule, hitting the green plus at the bottom, and this rule, the label will be 50M. And now what we need to do is to put in a little bit of syntax in here so that QGIS will only look for contours with a value of 50 meters, like an interval of 50 meters, because we're going to change the thickness of these contours and make them a little bit thicker. Okay, so the syntax that we need for it is what I've got up on the screen here, and this will be in the notes below, so you can just copy and paste it. So grab that little bit of text and paste it into the filter field, and so any elevation value that equals 50 is going to meet this criteria. And what we're going to do is, instead of a green contour here, we'll make it black, and instead of 0.18 millimeters, we're going to make it 0.35. So this will make our 50-meter contours a bit thicker, and if I hit apply, you folks can see the 50-meter contours out on the mountain have gotten a little bit thicker. Now, of course, it would be nice to add some labels onto our contours as well. I'm not going to put contours every 10 meters. That would be very busy on the map. But what I'm going to do is do rule-based contours. And again, we've got to hit the plus at the bottom, and we're going to put in our contours here to match our index contours. So the labels are going to be on our index contours at 50-meter intervals. So there's the filter that makes that happen. Now, very importantly here, under the value section here, we need to make sure that it's going to show the elevation value of the contours. FID is the element ID in the database, so that's not helpful. We want the elevation value. Now for our text here, Arial's fine. We'll make it 8 point. It doesn't have to be too big. These contour labels are going to be on top of the line. So we want to put a buffer in behind them of 0.6 millimeters, so we've got a white background behind the text to help make it more legible. Then go down to the placement section here and turn on the online feature so that the contour is placed exactly on the line and not above the line. So it makes it easier to read. Then for repetition, we probably want these labels to repeat as you go along the map. So every 120 millimeters is fine. So every 12 centimeters on the map, you will have another one of these contours. So we'll hit OK and we'll hit OK. And so now when we zoom in, you folks can see that we've got our contours here, 250, 300, 350. And if you ever want to make changes to the size of the labels, just go back and click on your layer. Go to the labels section, double click on your filter here, and then you can go back and you can change the text size if you want. So I'm going to do this same process now for the other part of the mountain as well. Okay, so I've got the contours placed now for both of those data sets here, and you can see I've got my 92H and my 92G contours here. So I'm going to group these as well so that I can turn my contours on and off as a group. Now, like I was saying, if you only have one geotiff that you're working with, you won't need to create these groups. Okay, so our contours are done. Now, the next thing that would be nice would be to bring in property data from the province so that we can overlay this on top and make sure that we're not going to be planning our trails any place where there is private property. So the province's mapping portal is iMap BC. So if you go to iMap BC and then zoom in on the same area, then we can look at bringing in the parcel data for the same vicinity. So once you're zoomed in on the area, go to the Data Sources tab on iMap BC and add provincial layers. Once the layers group comes up, go down to land ownership and then scroll down under land ownership to parcel map BC by owner type. Expand that and then hit the checkbox for that data. Once you hit OK, and once you've zoomed in close enough, then that parcel data will appear. Now you can see it's all colorized here, so you can sort out which is private land, the yellow stuff, and then which is federal land, which is reserve land, which is park land, and which is just open provincial land that hasn't been surveyed, which isn't colored at all. So what we want to do is to download all of this stuff so that we can add that to our map. So what we're going to do here is go to the Export tab now and choose Provincial Layer Download. Once you've done that, hit the Prepare Order button on the left. Now this is when where it comes back to projection again here. The default here is for BC Alberta's projection. In the menu there, you'll find the UTM zone. So this is zone 10. So I'm going to switch to that zone. It just makes for less conversion that's needed by QGIS. But what you'll notice here is if I zoomed out in the main map beyond, I wouldn't be able to see the parcel data. It gets hidden. So I want to get all of Vetter Mountain, but when I zoom out to get all of Vetter in there, you can see that the parcel maps disappear. The parcels disappear. So what I've got to do is I've got to draw a polygon around Vetter Mountain to indicate the area of that I want to get parcels for. So back under the Prepare Order dialog box here, UTM Zone 10, arc view shape is fine. Clipping should be off. And then what we've got to do, instead of using the map area, which would be far too large, we're going to draw a custom area of interest. So once you switch to that, hit the Draw a Custom AOI button, and it's going to open up another map. And you will need to zoom in on the area that you're interested in getting the map data for. So again, you've got to go and find the area where you're working, and then grab the polygon tool, and then just draw a polygon. And anything, any parcel that's touching this red line or is inside this red line will get included in the data order. So you got to go back to where you started and double click. So once you're done, hit the next button and then hit the Submit AOI button. This will take you back to the previous dialog box where you put in your email address, hit the I agree button, and then hit Submit. In a few minutes, a zip file will be sent to you. Download that zip file. And inside that zip file, go and open it up, and you'll find a folder that's called PMBC, blah, blah, blah. Grab that whole folder and put it into your project folder. So I'm going to do that here, and we'll return to QGIS. All right, so what I've done is I've taken the PMBC parcel folder that came inside that zip file, and I've moved it inside my project folder here. You can see there's my contours, and there's my QGIS project, and there's the 2 geotiffs that we are working with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into QGIS, and I'm going to go to the layer menu, and this time we are adding a vector layer. So now we'll go and find inside the PMBC folder, you are looking for the SHP file. So find that SHP file. It'll be one of the larger files in there, not necessarily the largest, but you'll see it'll say SHP on the end. So go ahead and open it up, and then hit the add button at the bottom. Now, you want to make sure that your contours are on top of this data. You can see how the parcels are obscuring the contours. So what I got to do is grab my layer here for my parcels and put it below the contours. So here you can see that's inside the group, and if I move it slightly to the left, there we go. It's outside of the group and below it in the stack order. So there we go. Now what we want to do is get QGIS to colorize these parcels by the owner type. So if you double click on the layer that you've imported and you go to symbology, switch from single symbol at the top to categorized. Then for the value, hit the drop down menu and choose owner type. So now it's going to colorize the properties by the owner. Down at the bottom, hit the classify button, and now it's going to show you all of the different land types. So here you can see private land is green. So that's kind of the area that we'd want to avoid. So I'm going to change it from green to black. And I'm going to change, no, the federal land is red is fine. So I'll leave all that and we'll hit OK. So now you can see the areas where we've got private property. Now, obviously, we don't want to make the colors this strong because we can no longer see the contours, especially on the parcels where we've colorized it black. So what we can do, if you go ahead and double click on the layer again, you can keep these colors. You can change them if you want. But what I'm going to do is go down to the legend section, and you'll find the opacity slider, which you can add as a widget. And having done this, now what you'll see is when you expand the layer that there is a slider. So now I can change the intensity of the color as necessary. Now that I've got all of these different colors here, and I have this polygon layer added, I can, if the layer is selected, so make sure it's selected, go up into the QGIS interface and look for the identify button. So it's a little cursor icon hitting a blue circle with an eye inside it. Click that, and then when you click on one of these parcels, it'll show you the parcel information. So here, if I scroll down, this is owner type private. Now, obviously it is because it's black and it's colorized. But if you ever want to find out the information about a parcel, you can just click on it using this I button. When you're done, go back to the pan tool so that you're not always, picking parcels as you click your way around the map. Now, as you're moving around on the map in the pan tool, left click will allow you to move. If you've got a wheel on your mouse, that will allow you to zoom in and zoom out. If your wheel has a button on it, that will allow you to pan at any time. So you can just pan with your wheel mouse. Okay, so I'll close down the identity dialog here. And so now the next thing that we are going to do is to bring in other information like streams. So if we go back to iMap BC here, I'm going to turn off the parcels because we've already got that. And I'm going to go back to data sources and provincial layers here, and I'm going to type in stream. So what you want is the base map here. So as soon as you have added that to your search list, hit the checkbox here and hit OK. So now what's going to happen is those streams are going to be here on the map, and we'll do the same thing. We'll create an area of interest, and we'll get iMap to email those stream locations to us so we can add them on the map. So we're going to get that same, we're going to get a zip file again, then open the zip file, find a folder inside it, and put a copy of that folder or move that folder inside the zip file into your QGIS project folder. Okay, so here it is here. So you can see it's called FWA Stream Networks. And so what we're going to do is go into Vetter Mountain here, and we're going to, in QGIS, add another vector layer. And we're looking for the SHP file inside this as well. Okay, so those orange lines are the streams. Now these are really important because obviously we don't want to, if we're building a trail there, we need to put a bridge there. We need to be prepared to do that. Now, this is not a very easy thing to see on the map. So I'm going to double click on the layer and I'm going to go to its symbology. Instead of it being orange, I'm going to make it blue, and I'll make it a little bit of a darker blue here. Hit OK. And I'll make the line weight quite thick, say 0.6 millimeters. Now, we should all throw a label on this, so I'll label it here. So a single label, and I think, yeah, the name, genus name here, I guess that's the one. So text again here, Arial, maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger, 9 point with a buffer behind it again, and then change it so that it's being placed on the line. Okay, so now all of our creeks are labeled so we know that we are when we're doing trail planning. So we've done the parcels and the streams as separate orders. And that way you get a separate zip file each time, and you get a separate folder each time, and you get a separate layer each time, so you can turn each of those things off independently. Now, if you're living in an area where there's wildlife habitat surveys that have been done, you can download those from iMap as well. So if you just type in wildlife habitats, you will find what we're looking for here. So wildlife habitat areas approved, and I would do color themed. So hit the checkbox, hit OK. And then make sure that only that is turned on when you're doing the order. Hit prepare order, then download that stuff again. Same deal. Email comes to you, grab the zip file, copy the folder out of it, and put it into your QGIS directory. Okay, so I have copied that folder in here. So there it is there, Wildlife Habitat Area Polygon. So I'm going to go back into QGIS here, and I am going to add that vector layer here for our wildlife habitat areas. Okay, so for the layer stacking, contours are going to be on top and other data below that. So for our habitat areas here, we're going to double click on it, and for the symbology here, what we're going to do is categorized again. And down at the bottom, after we've chosen the feature code or feature name, common name, not sure which one of it is. I'll try the WHA tag. No, I'll use the common name. All right, and then we'll hit classify. So there we go. So there's our various kinds of plants or animals that are here. And so when we hit, no, because you know what? I want to show where the major zones are. So I'm not going to do this. I'm going to grab the F code. I think that's the one that I want. I'll classify it here. It's going to bug me that I'm changing my colors. So that's not it either here. Well, that's probably it there. Yes, so this is the one that we want. So you've got your wildlife habitat area, core area, and then the buffer zones around it. And then riparian zones, this is water-based separation, so protecting a water course. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the colors. The core area, red, that's cool. The management zone, I'm going to switch that to being kind of like an orange color here. And then my riparian zone, that's kind of along a water course, so I'm going to change the color to like a blue. and hit OK. So now I'm color coding everything by, what's happening. And again, if the colors are too strong, double click on the layer, go down to the legend section and add the opacity slider so that you can change the intensity of the visualization of your wildlife habitat areas. Now, of course, I think it's time to get some trails on here from Trailforks. So what you can do, of course, is go into Trailforks, and what you need to do is find your riding area. So zoom out a little bit until you see the little red icon on top of your... Oh, I don't know why it's not showing it. I guess you can just look for it here. So I'm looking for the icon here. There it is, Vetter Mountain. So just click on the red icon. It'll pop up a little dialog box here. And then in the resulting dialog box, if you go to the Trails tab, you can scroll on down to the bottom here, and you can download the trails in whatever format you want. Now, I'm just going to use KML. That's fine. And then, of course, if you want to, you can filter by sanctioned trails, unsanctioned trails if you want. And whether they are, so if you're an admin on Trailforks, you can choose whether there's public trails or hidden trails shown, and include that or not in the list of trails that you download. So once you download it, you'll get a KML file. Put that KML file into your QGIS project folder with the other stuff. Okay, I've done that now. So here in my project directory, you can see I've got my KML file with the Trailforks trails. So back in my project, layer, add, vector. And then we'll go to folder here and grab that KML file and add it to the list. So go ahead and hit add. It's going to show that there's something happening here. So add those layers and then hit close. Now, the trails should go on top of the contours. So grab your Trailforks trails and put them at the top of the stack so they will overwrite the contours below. Now, we want some labels on our trail so that we can see what they're called. So click on labels. Single labels is the trick here. Name is fine. Text, again, I'll probably use Arial 9mm with a 0.6 buffer in behind and placed on the line, not above it. And I'm not going to worry about repeating. So I'll just hit OK. And so now you can see that all of our trails are named. Now, the next thing that we want to do here is to add our hill shading. So this is going to assist us with visualizing the mountain. So I'm going to turn off the wildlife habitat areas here, and I'm going to turn off my land parcels, just leaving me with my streams and trails. So now what we're going to do is get QGIS to colorize the mountain based on the slope value of the terrain. Now you can see where the contours get closer together, so of course that's probably a little bit steeper. But to really see it, it's helpful if we can color code it. So what we're going to do is under the raster menu, we're going to grab Analysis and Hillshade. So here we're really going to be able to see how the slope works because of the shading. Now we are going to colorize by slope here. I was getting ahead of myself a few seconds earlier, but we're going to do hill shading first. Just for visualization purposes. All right, so you've got to put in the DEM TIFFs that you're starting with. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to create light from the southeast. So light from the north is an angle of 0. The azimuth of the light, so 180 degrees would be south. So 315 is directly from the west. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in at, I guess this would be 135 degrees. So that's from the southeast. And the altitude, 45 degrees. That's totally fine. And then these options down here don't really do too much. Sometimes the Zevenbergen shading is a little bit sharper, but whatever. What we need to do, just like we did with the contours, is we need to save this to its own file. So I will, same thing here, save the file. And I will call this hill shade And this is our 92G grid. Hit save and hit run. Now this won't take too long, and we'll see the results here straight away. Now the hill shading should be put in the stack here underneath your contours as well. And I'm actually going to put it below all the other layers here too. Now I'm going to have 2 hill shading layers, so of course I am going to create a group for that. All right, so I'm going to do that for the other side. Okay, so I've got my hill shading for both sides. So hill shading is really great for visualization here. If I turn off my contours and I turn off my trails, like I said, if you zoom in, you can really see, where old trails used to be. And we've actually rediscovered some trails that were underneath the vegetation layer because the LiDAR data showed it up. So that's hill shading. So the next thing that we're going to work with here is doing the slope analysis, which is probably the most useful kind of analysis that you can have in QGIS for trail planning. So under raster and analysis here, so we were doing hill shade before, this time we are going to do slope. So again, you want to make sure that you're working with your DEM data sets, not the other raster data sets that are attached. So I'm going to go up and grab my 92G and make sure that you express your slope as a % instead of degrees. That's the kind of data that we think in when we're doing trail planning. Okay, so no vertical exaggeration, slope as a %, scroll down, and again, we're going to save this to its own file. So slope 92G, okay, and we'll run this. And what we're going to end up with here is a black and white file. It's not very handy for visualization. Just got to get that slope in. So there it is there. So what we need to do is recolorize this slope based on its slope value. So go ahead and double click on the layer. And what we need to do is to change the colorization here. So the render type at the top, instead of single band gray, we're going to do single band pseudo color. And for our color ramp here, which is just underneath my cursor, we need to choose create new color ramp. In the resulting dialog box, grab the catalog CPT city, hit OK. And then on the next dialog box, you've got to grab the, I think it's called topography. And in that list, grab elevation. Now, normally this color banding would be used to identify the elevation of the ground, so green being the lowest and black being the highest. We're going to use it here instead to analyze the slope. So go ahead and hit OK. So now we've got slopes from 0 to 740%. So that's the maximum slope that's in this data set. But we're never going to build on that. In fact, we're not going to build on anything probably more than 60% slope anyway. So if you put in 60, 0 slope is blue, green is 12%, and yellow is 24%. And that's pretty reasonable here. So 0 and 60. So when we hit OK, you folks are going to see how the mountain's being colorized. So that's really useful stuff. So now we're going to go and do that for the other data set. So raster, analysis, slope. We'll grab our 92H geotiff, slope expressed as %, scroll down, add it to its own file. So this is our slope 92H, and save. Okay, so with these two, we will put them together in their own group. And just as before, I'm going to grab my 92H data set here, and I'm going to change the colorization here to that topography type here. So running from 0 to, again, 60% slope. Okay, so now when we look out, we can really kind of see the lay of the land here and see where our slopes are going to provide, useful buildable areas. So in your stack of layers here, I would recommend that you have your trails at the top, your contours underneath that, and then your administrative polygons for, land parcels and streams and so on, and then put your raster layers, so your slope and your hill shading at the bottom. So if you want to turn off the slope analysis and look at the hill shading, you can do that. But most of the time, you folks are going to be interested in the slope. Now, for planning a trail, you'll be able to see now where there are places on the map where you can realistically hope to put in a trail. And we are putting in a new trail ourselves here for AMTB users. And we are connecting it across this bit of terrain here. And as you can see, this is a pretty steep bit of terrain. So what we want to do is to create a new trail layer so that we can analyze its slope, which QGIS can do. So the next step here for creating a new trail to then recon later after we planned out the trail is to go to the layer menu here, and we're going to create a new geopackage layer. Now this layer name and the data for it is also going to be stored in that same folder. So hit the little ellipsis button here in the top right corner, and we're putting it inside Vetter. So I'll just call this new trail. Okay, so the kind of geometry that we're going to be working with here is a multi-line. So choose the multi-line option. And now here, this is where the different coordinate reference systems come into play. So in this drop-down menu, what you want to do is to choose the same coordinate reference system as the project. So here you can see UTM Zone 10. That actually came from those geotiffs. So the geotiffs, their data is being shown as according to UTM Zone 10, so we're going to choose that one. Now, the next thing that we want to do here is to add a field if we want to give the trail, the new trail route, a name. Now, this new trail layer can contain multiple routes, not just one, but multiple, which is why we chose multi-line. So, and of course, we want to include the Z dimension. All right, so if you want to have multiple different proposed routes and you want to store it in the same layer, we need to be able to attach a name to that line that we draw. Now, otherwise, if we don't do anything, it'll just be numbered. The trails will be numbered, but not named. So what we need to do is to add a new field called name, and we'll give it a maximum length of 80 characters. That should be fine. And we're going to add that to the fields in this. So now the trails will have their own unique number, but now we can also name them. Okay, so that's it. We can hit OK. And now our new trail is on the list here, and I'm going to put it on the stack pretty close to the top. Now I'm going to double click on this trail here, and I'm going to change its symbology from purple here to a really bright blue color, because it's probably going to be a blue trail. And I'm going to make the trail thickness here 0.5 millimeters. All right, so now we are ready for the first time to create a new trail. Now, you're going to need to know roughly where you are heading. I know that I'm heading sort of right around this little green plateau here that you can see on my cursor. So I've got to work my way around the mountain here, and we're starting down here right by the forest service road. So with that new trail set current in the layer list, go over and grab this pencil icon that's immediately above the drawing area. Now this is the toggle command for toggling a layer's editing. So now we put it into edit mode. Now beside it here, you're going to see that there is a tool here for adding a new line. So we're going to click on that tool now. So now we're ready to start drawing a line. Now the new line that you're drawing is going to be a thin red line initially. So it's going to look, it's going to be a little hard to see at first. So I'm going to zoom in here, and we're starting right here along the creek. And so I can kind of see it, there's a little plateau here. So I'm just going to start here right at the road, and you'll see there's that really thin dashed line there, and I'm going to come across the plane here. So I'm just spitballing at this point, and I'm trying to work my way up the mountain and just see what our grades are going to look like here. So here I'm going to try and go across these these areas here as slowly as I can. You have to be wary of how fast, of course, you are crossing these contour lines, because, of course, if you go straight up, you could make a trail that's completely unclimbable. Now, when you get into a zone here where you know it's just going to be too steep because you can see it by the colorization, then you can start adding some switchbacks. So here, I'll just try and work some switchbacks here, and I'm going to try and avoid those really steep areas. Now, keep in mind that even though I'm finding the flattest areas on the land, once you start actually hiking this line, which, of course, you will be able to do, there may be natural obstacles that are there in real life that QGIS isn't picking it up. So if there's like a whole grove of downed trees that are in that area, you may end up having to go through there with a chainsaw and cut that stuff out of the way. So here, I'll just stop. So once you can see that red line there where I've got some segments drawn. I can't edit the segments until I'm done drawing my initial trail. So to finish drawing the initial trail, you right-click. Then QGIS is going to tell you here, it's going to auto-generate a number for this trail, for the trail database inside QGIS. And this one, it's the first trail, so it's going to be 01. Now here for the name, we can give it a name. So this is the name for this particular route that we've drawn. If we draw 3 routes, well, they could all have their own name. So I'll just call this climb.1. I'll hit OK, and there's our blue trail. Now, up on that editing section again here, I can hit the save icon to save my work before going. Or if I hit the pencil icon to stop editing the layer, QGIS will ask me if I want to save my work, and indeed, I do. So we've drawn a little bit of the trail now, and the question is, what are the grades like on this trail? Now, this trail is being lain over top of our GeoTIFF, and so what QGIS can tell us is, based on the slope of the land, what kind of grades are we getting with this route? So what you'll need to do is to go into the plugins menu here and go to Manage and Install. When this dialog pops up at the top, in the search field, type in Profile. And once you've done that, look for the Profile tool and then click Install Plugin. So once that's done, from your plugins menu, the Profile tool will be here, and you'll see it's called Terrain Profile. Now, when you activate the Terrain Profile tool, it pops up this dialog box here that you can see at the bottom here. So I'm going to drag it here by its title bar, and that way you can make it so it floats. If you've got a second monitor on your screen, that can be helpful. So what we need to do here, and I'll explain it, once we've got the trail route selected in this dialog box, in this cell here on the left, we're going to see the profile of the trail. On the right here is where we set up the layers that are going to be used to help us create the profile. So the first thing that we need to do is to grab the GeoTIFF that this trail is on top of. So for me, this is 92H, actually. I'll change the order here. So 92H, that's selected. So I add that layer here. So this is what my profile is being built on top of. Then what I got to do is select the layer that I used to create the new trail. And in the menu here on the bottom right, choose Selected Layer. So now it is showing us a profile for the trail. So here, as you can see, as I pass my cursor along it, I've got a trail that is about 370, you can see it here, about 370 meters long, and it's going from 80 to 130 meters. So that's about 50 meters over 370. That's some actually pretty decent grades here. So 50 divided by 370, that's 13%. So that's about as steep as you'd want for a climb trail. So let's keep going. So I'm going to close this down, and we're going to go back and we're going to edit our trail some more. So I've got the trail selected in the layers panel. Go back and hit the pencil icon. And now what you're going to look for here, just beside the new line tool, is the geometry edit tool. Now in the drop-down menu here, choose vertex tool, current layer. Then what you'll do is you'll pass your cursor on top of that line, and now you can start making edits to this route. So here, if I click on the trail, you'll see that there's these different tools here. There's a plus if I want to add a vertex in the middle of a segment. If you put your cursor on one of the existing vertices, if you click it, then you can drag it and then click again to relocate that vertex to a new location. So here, if I want to click this vertex and then move it over here, you can see that I can do that. Now, at the end of the line here, as I move my cursor there, you might not be able to see it very clearly, but there is a little plus symbol. So if I click here, now what QGIS is going to allow me to do is to extend my trail. So I can just keep going here. If I put my cursor on top of that little plus, you can see it turns red. So that puts me into vertex addition mode. And now you can see I've got the dashed red line there, dotted red line. And I can keep going with adding to this trail and working on my route. Now, I should have my parcels on here. So here you can see this dark zone, that is private land that I'm trying to avoid. This land here, maybe I should just check on its identity here. So I'm going to switch to the polygon layer, hit the identify tool, and I'm going to click on this parcel. And it's going to tell me that the owner type is municipal. So I am on municipal land here, and it's within the FERD. So obviously, if you're building here, you want permission from the landowner to put in this trail. All right, so we'll go back to hand mode here. So we deselect the parcel. I'll go back to our new trail and enable editing again, and then go back into the vertex tool for the current layer. Okay, so I'm hitting the plus here. So what I want to do here is just keep working my way up the mountain. And like I said, I've got to get over to this plateau right here. So I've got a ways to go. So I'm just going to keep working here on my way up the mountain. And you may need to look around the mountain for a while just to try and figure out where the best route to get up is. Now this plateau here looks like kind of a good place to start working out a route up to the this plateau area up here. So I'm kind of heading off in the wrong direction. So what I can do is I can put my cursor on top of now I'm in vertex editing mode, so I've got to stop that for a second here, and then toggle the editing mode, come back in, and instead of adding vertices, I need to go back to the vertex tool and click on this vertex and drag it over here so that I can make my line go in a new direction. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to use the profile tool to help us figure out what to do if we make a trail route that's too steep. Now here you can see I've got some really steep areas here, so I am going to have to zigzag my way up here, I'm quite sure. Like I said, I won't know until we recon this area to know if this is a realistic route to take. So it's not until we do the recon that we will know this. So I'm going to finish editing here. And we're going to go back and we're going to rerun the profile tool again. So I'm going to get my 92H, my geotiff here, add that layer, and then click on my new trail layer and add that in. So here's our profile. Now I hate to say it, but actually we're doing really well here. This is a lot better than I was thinking it was going to be. Now as you pass your cursor along the profile, you'll see the red dot on the screen showing where you are on the map. So here I've got to get to this point, but it would be kind of nice if I could skip kind of going up and going back down again. So from right about here, I'm going down. So is there some way that I can get to here without having going back up and back down? So if I zoom in, so here you can see, how can I change this? So I'm not going up so hard here and then coming back down again. Well, what we can do is go back and turn on the editing tool here again, and we'll vertex tool for the current layer. And now I can start adjusting some of the locations of these vertices and see if I can prevent a sort of going up over the hump and going back down again. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. Sometimes it's just what you got to do. But if you can revise your grades intelligently, you can maybe make your trail so that it's more efficient at the climbing process. So having made those changes here with the vertex tool, I will save them. And then what I'm going to do is go back and click on my trail here. So I'm going to get out of editing mode. And all you've got to do is, in the profile tool, simply click on selected polyline and then selected layer again, and you will get an updated profile. So here you can see I've got another little hump that I'd like to try and avoid. So we can see right here. So if I'm going from this location to this location, maybe if I went on this side instead of up on the high side, that would make more sense. So here, moving those vertices down, and we'll reanalyze the profile. So here, I'll just hit the pencil icon, save my work. Oh, there it is there. I still got a bit of a hump, so maybe I need to come on the bottom of this thing. Okay, so save it. There. Now you'll notice I did not actually have to edit or leave the editing mode for the layer. I just had to save it. So once you've saved the layer edits, you can still leave the layer as being edited. And then you can come back and rerun the profile tool by simply switching from selected polyline back to selected layer, so that you will get a new profile. So this allows you to look all the way along the trail and look for places where, at least as far as the DEM data is concerned, that you've got some pretty crazy grades on one portion of your trail. Now, once you are satisfied with the route that you've planned, now what we can do is we can export it to Gaia. Now, I find that Gaia is the best way to work with a route that I planned in QGIS, so I can go out and do a recon on it. So finish your trail edits, so hit the yellow pencil icon again, and right-click on your new trail and choose Export Save Features As. So in here, save it as a KML file. So I'll say New Trail, and I will put this, sure, on the desktop is fine. I'll have to give it a file name here as well for some reason. Now for the CRS, you can just leave it in whatever. When you bring it into Gaia, Gaia will figure it out, so it's at the proper location on the map. Okay, for symbology export, I'll take the feature symbology, so I'll get this blue line when I see it in Gaia. For a scale, probably 1 to 10,000 or 1 to 5,000 is fine. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. Do not add this new exported layer. You already got it. There's no need to add it to your QGIS map. So just go ahead and hit OK. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show how we can bring this into Gaia and import it so that you can go and recon it. Okay, so now I have Gaia GPS up on my screen. And so obviously you'll have to have an account for yourself and also have the Gaia GPS app on your phone so that you'll be able to see it when you get onto your phone. On the left, go to the folder icon here so that we can add some new data. So go to create new item, and no, not create new item. It's actually this one right here, import data. So not the folder icon, import data. Then go to select files, and then you can go to your location where you exported the KML and open it up. So there's the new file that we brought into Gaia GPS. So go ahead and save it. And then make sure when you've got Gaia on your phone, go into your saved items section on Gaia GPS on your phone and pull down to update. So that will pull down this new trail from your GPS accounts online and get it onto your phone so that you can do a recon of that trail, boots on the ground, and really see if this route is going to work. So last thing here before we wrap things up, one of the also really cool things about QGIS is the ability rather to do visualization of your data set. Now, under the view menu, go to 3D map views and choose new 3D map view. And this dialog box will pop up here. Its own kind of own little dialog box here. You can expand it to make it a little bit bigger. Now I don't want it to be docked, so there is an entry here about docking it, so I'm going to undock it so it's in its own dialog box. And there you can see we've got the kind of a little preview of our map in the background. Now what we need to do is to go to the wrench icon here so that we can set up 3D visualization. So go down to configure. So for terrain here, instead of flat terrain, we're going to use DEM. And for elevation here, we'll get it to use the 92H data set. And then hit OK. Now it's going to take a few seconds, but what we're going to get here is 3D visualization with the current layers turned on. So you can see here, I can move around. If you use your middle mouse button, up and down will pull the terrain down towards you, and then you can zoom in and out. Of course, you can make this full screen so it's bigger. So right now I've got my slope layer on, I've got my trails on, I've got my parcels on as well. So this is a bit ugly. So what you can do is you can minimize the layer. And here I'm going to turn off the slope, and I'm going to turn off the parcel polygons, and I'll turn on the hill shading. So now when I go back to my 3D map here, it will update to show it with the hill shading, which is probably a nicer way to look at this data. So here with our new map, you can see, or our new trail route here, we can kind of see where it's going to go on the mountain. And you can kind of get a sense of the grades going up the hill here. Now, in Gaia, once you've done your recon, of course, you could save the route that you follow in Gaia, and you can bring it back into QGIS for analysis. So on one of the recons that we did for this new trail, we walked it and then saved the track that we walked in Gaia and brought it back in to QGIS for visualization. Okay, well, I hope you've found this helpful. For us, it saved us a bunch of time because we know that there are places on the mountain where we simply can't build any trails. And by being able to bring in our wildlife polygons and to bring in parcel information, this just really helps us plan trails more intelligently. Thanks for watching, and if you've got any questions, you can reach me at wes@fvmba.com.